Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
As explained previously, video had to be chopped in two. This is the beginning of part two. You've driven a lot of cars, and you've owned a lot of cars. If you had to pick one as a driver's car, what's your favorite car to drive?
Well, it varies a little bit on where you're driving it, but holistically, when I think about what I love about cars, it's big, crazy, loud, dramatic supercars. And that doesn't mean they're the best for a tight racetrack or a tight mountain road, but I love Lamborghini Murciélagos. And they are great handling cars. They are very, very fast, but they sound better than anything else. They're available rarely with a propagated manual transmission. I loved them the moment I saw the first one at Road and Track article, and I thought, this is perfect. And so the pursuit of that car, it really defines a lot of my personal career, and just chasing after good car credit or good enough car credit to be able to buy stuff. And so I've got the highest mileage coupe and the highest mileage roadster, both sitting right below us.
And what's high mileage in that world?
On the coupe is 60,000. On the roadster it's 25.
Okay, at 60,000 miles, how many major repairs have been done to it?
Really nothing up until last year. So in the last year, the car would have been, I guess, I don't know, getting close to 15, 20 years old. And so we were trying to go through them all, my Diablo, my Mercy Coupe, and my Mercy Roadster, and just do everything that they needed, because I knew one needed a clutch, I knew one needed the valve adjustment, one leaked more oil than I was comfortable with, and so really we got with the local shop, DC Motorworks, and went through all of them. And honestly, I mean, that should pretty much prep them for the next 10 years. There's not a lot to go terribly, terribly wrong.
Okay, well, we went out to lunch in one of your cars, not this time, but the last time, and I asked you specifically about the clutches and so on, and you indicated to me, well, if you're going to work on the clutch, you may as well pull the engine out. While you got the engine out, you may as well do the valves. You may as well. Next thing you know, the repairs get rather extensive.
Yes, as anyone who's dealt with cars that have expensive parts and are difficult to access, you suffer from the while you're in there itis.
Yes.
And we did a lot of that, because you're like, well, we didn't come for this, but here we are and it needs it, so it's time.
Okay.
That is the problem with some of these cars that have massive engines in small packaging.
Yes.
Is that access is so tough. When you are going to go and bite the bullet and pay the 40, 50, 60 hours to remove and reinstall an engine, it's dumb not to do everything that you encounter, and everything that you encounter is also expensive. And so it may just be parts, but the parts aren't cheap. And so those bills swelled a bit. It was right at $100,000 to do everything on all three cars.
But that's three cars. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I've driven cross country, either east to west, west to east. I've done that a bunch of times. I've also gone north to south. I've been as far north as Copper Harbor in Michigan, all the way down to Key West. I've done that drive a couple times.
There you go.
I've done some long drives by myself. I've done some long drives with other people. The first major cross country drive I took was with my brother Rick, and he accompanied me. He flew out to Detroit, and then he and I drove a car to California so I could go to law school. And we drove this little four-banger Dodge Charger thing, a 1984 of some sort, 2-something liter engine. It made it out there, and it survived almost all of law school. Almost. It made a sound, imagine this if you will, take an aluminum baseball bat and stuff it into a running lawnmower. The noise it made, that's what the noise the transmission made in third or fourth gears. And so I had to scrap that car in California and get another car to drive home in. But the drive cross country was actually, and that's why they make so many road trip movies and books, is driving that kind of distance. There is something about just the stuff you see, the people you encounter, and like even years later, I'm like, oh wait, that's right, I've been to Tucumcari. Oh, that's right, I played on an upright Defender arcade machine in Flagstaff on that drive. Weird memories come back, but it's. What was your first major road trip that wasn't a Cannonball?
As really a graduation trip, I did a very inexpensive car rally. Our lights flickering. We don't do this lighting every day on VinWiki, so you'll notice.
As soon as you mention it, it fixed.
That's it. Get yourself in line. So I did a New York to LA 5-day rally with some friends back in 2004. But then just doing it one time, you become like the go-to, hey, I got to drive this car somewhere a long way. Will you fly out there and do it with me? And I love, that if anybody's got a bat signal in the air, it's, hey, I need you to come drive a long way, Ed, and not complain about it. So I do that. A buddy of mine had a Lamborghini serviced out in California and was driving it to the East Coast. And so we did that last year, which is very tight, as you would imagine, having gone to lunch in one today. Sitting in that for 4 days straight is something. But worth it every time.
Well, I love the Lamborghinis. I absolutely adore those cars. And I've been now in 2 of them of yours. And both times, the first one I got out, I hit my head on the door, climbing out. I know how to get into them because it's similar to how I get into a couple of my cars. Right. But we were in that car, and the seat's all the way back, all the way down. And I still feel like I'm a little kid in an amusement park ride that's the wrong size. Now, it is an amusement park ride. And it is the wrong size. It is.
But it's, again, worth it.
No, absolutely. So the question, I know that you have a thing for these Lamborghinis, and so do I. I just don't have that many of them. Me being at 0 and you being at whatever you're at. But is there another car out there that you're thinking, boy, that's my next car that you haven't gotten yet?
So that was an existential level problem for me when I got the first one.
Okay.
Because I was like, why do I have to go to work again? And paying to eat and feed your kids, that's for the birds, right? I'm doing this to buy cars.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I need to pick some other stupid car to plan to buy just so that I feel like working hard.
Right.
And I'm working at my best when I'm chasing some stupid goal. And I said, without the remotest idea of how it might come together, I'm going to buy a Bugatti. And it took, I think I said that in 2019. And so it took about 5-6 years.
Okay.
And last year, I bought one. I bought a 2012 Veyron Grand Sport that was originally the Frankfurt Motor Show car, and then it was owned by Birdman of Cash Money Records.
Okay.
He gave it to Justin Bieber as a present.
Bieber. Okay,
then, yeah, that one. It got repossessed. It was sold to Floyd Mayweather, then sold to a gentleman by the name of Little Uzi Vert.
Oh, yeah, I know Little Lucy.
Right, yeah. Well, Thanksgiving, right? And so, and then I bought it through a dealer in Florida. So it's seen some things, but it drives great. It's, one of 14 U.S. Grand Sports. And so I love it. So now I suppose I'm at the same crossroads. I got to pick the next stupid goal.
If you had to get a car, say, before 1960, is there something from that era that if you had to get one, you'd say, I could deal with that car. I could drive that car a little bit?
The easy answers are the early 300 SLs or the 50s Ferraris race cars that are legendary and iconic. But I've become really a little bit obsessed with pre-war Bentleys lately. The general community enthusiasm for pre-war cars is dropping a lot. Yeah. And there are some real threats to the long-term values in these cars, which makes me think, maybe I can...
Buyer's market.
That's right. So I don't know. They are usable cars. You can put miles on them. There's tons of events that you could take them to. Yeah. It's a hard... The people who love them have loved them for longer than I've been alive.
Right.
And so it's a little challenging to kind of enter that market space and know, I don't even know what too cheap is, right?
Yeah.
You can't lowball them until you know what they ought to be worth. And so I'm trying to explore that a bit. But we've talked about a lot of do a car trek of old hot rods that are also kind of a depressed market right now. But I think there's always something out there. And that's a cool thing. And I say this a lot. When we say that we love cars... Right. We all mean something different.
Right.
And that love of cars is the intersection, and it means that we can talk about any cars with anybody and enjoy that. And nobody's more right or more wrong, but I mean something different than you do, as anybody else does. And so I love, just like you say, just as exploring car culture through that lens of tell me what that means for you.
It is interesting because I watch a lot of the auctions, Barrett Jackson and Meekum and all that. And you watch the prices on these cars, and there is always a thing about how the most valuable cars seem to be the ones that can be purchased by people with buying power now, but they're buying the cars they worshiped when they're teenagers. So if I've got money, I'm not going to buy a Bugatti Royale. I want to buy a Hemi 4-speed Daytona.
Right.
Okay? But then again, 20 years ago, the Bugatti Royale, through the roof. And so that does seem to happen with the generations. So it's sad to see, because I've seen some of these muscle cars that went for big money just a couple of years ago dropping in price. But the other thing about the old cars, sadly, is that some old cars will be hard to get parts for or to find experts on, and there won't be some guy around the corner who can do the work that your Lamborghinis need.
Right.
And for instance, the Preston Tucker story with the Tucker automobiles, there's 47 of them left in the world. They've all got these really weird pre-select gear shifts on the transmissions. There's like 2 people on Earth who know how to fix those.
Hopefully they're teaching people.
And hopefully they live much longer.
Well, you do start to run into those issues of like tires aren't available anymore or certain parts are not available, and you start thinking about, all right, what does it take to re-engineer these things? And fortunately, some of the cars are becoming valuable enough, like a Tucker did, where the owners that are buying them at current money have the means to solve the problems, like Jay Leno solving the problem of needing a new engine for his turbine car.
Right.
Turbine car. And
we'll take either.
There, appreciate it. And so I think that you're right, and we're always, nothing will ever be as cool as the coolest car when you were 16 years old.
Right.
And I think that the more that we can understand that from a market perspective, the more buying power you end up having. Because like for me, choosing to irresponsibly finance these cars before I should have been able to afford them meant I bought them before the rest of my age cohort caught up in terms of means. So I was ahead of the curve. So I've made money on the cars just by being stupid and buying what I love. And as long as you don't love anything too weird, there's probably some truth in that and some value in that being the path, I guess, towards the dream car. But I think that we were talking about your neighbor that had a 250 GTO.
Yeah.
And, there's so many interesting examples of people who buy these cars and buy them cheap for whatever cheap is at that point, own them for a long time and sell them. And you told me as the car had transacted last year in the mid-50s, millions of dollars, that, he'd probably bought it for nothing. I would assume about $10,000-$15,000 based on when you said he had it. And he sold it for, I would think, probably about $1 million based on the timing in which you said he sold it. But at that point, to have $1 million versus $50 million today, that's the same. It's probably he would have been better off in the S&P 500. Yeah. And so you're still not going to beat the stock market. We're not calling them investments, but they can be good stores of value, and they can offset the consumption and the ownership cost if you do it the right way.
But not all cars are going to do that either. No. There's somebody out there right now who's got a Bugatti Royale going, I think I held on to that a little bit too long.
Well, and they're still worth a lot.
Yeah, I know.
But we were talking because we did an appraisal series, and I've consulted you on a few of the cars that we've appraised over that, just of different celebrity car collections and influencer YouTuber car collections. And one of them was like Ralph Lauren's Bugatti Atlantique has at some points in its existence been considered to be the most valuable car in the world. Okay. And so I'm talking to John Tamarian and John Ficarra, who are legendary figures and historians in the space, and they're like, well, we think it's probably only worth $50 million now, only. Yeah. Whereas the most valuable car in the world is the Uhlenhaut Coupe that sold for $142 million a couple of years ago. And so I said, well, I understand the significance of both cars. They're both singular in what they are. But if I am billionaire Ralph Lauren, multi-billionaire Ralph Lauren, and I own this car, I'll never sell it for not the most money in the world for a car. Right. So it's worth more to me than $142 million. Yeah. And so I was like, you can make that argument. Right. And, when you have cars where the supply and demand get wildly out of whack there and the values inherently go up, it can be a fun thing, a roller coaster to at least observe from the sidelines if we can't engage in it ourselves.
But it's kind of like trying to put a value on the Mona Lisa or some Van Gogh in a museum. It'll never get sold. Right. And if it's sold, it would sell for an insane amount of money. But you couldn't predict it because it depends on which 3 people show up to bid on it that day who are crazy and rich.
Correct. And as you know, being in the automotive law industry, we are a little bit handicapped by how legally documented the transactions of cars are in terms of what the values can do. Yeah. You can't launder money with a Bugatti. Well, if you do, you get caught.
Right. Now, I do have to tell you as the lawyer in this room that when you're renting the cars out, leasing the cars out, and you're the official owner of said cars, if somebody had gotten in an accident with one of your valuable cars and wrecked it and injured somebody grievously, that might have harmed your business.
Yes, so but there's no better time to go bankrupt than when everybody else is broke too.
Yeah, so I'm saying you probably got a little lucky there.
I did. I also, what I've learned, especially through VinWiki, is that I got extremely lucky because Back then, theft of exotic rental cars was not as prevalent as it is today.
Right.
And today, if you just start an exotic car rental company, somebody will try to steal every car you have within your first month of operation.
Kiss them goodbye.
Yes, and they will do that with forged licenses and paperwork. So it is fraudulent.
Yeah.
However, if you let a person sign a contract that governs their use of the car and then they simply violate that contract, that isn't the law. That's a civil agreement.
Yes.
And so when they remove the car from the state, change the VIN, and never bring it back, they've only wronged you in a civil way. It is theft by conversion, not grand theft auto. And so we've had to deal with a lot of that as much as we can from a VIN tracking perspective to try to help people recover such assets.
And so you get to hunt them down and sue them.
Right.
And
yes,
you
exactly.
hope they're around, and you hope they're collectible. And guess what? They're not even in the country anymore.
No. But it is amazing. I mean, a lot of them are. A lot of them just put a new VIN on the car and drive it on a temp tag in a state that doesn't care, and they use them until they get impounded.
Yeah.
Might be trying to buy a Ferrari like that right now.
Which, if it creates used cars you can buy or good content or both, everybody wins.
It's just, people helping people.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Ed, I want to thank you for having me on and for joining me here on this very special edition of Lehto's Law. Sir, thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Yep, bye. And that is the end of the interview with Ed Bolian of VinWiki. Thank you very much. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. But I digress.